The first thing is to approve the minutes from last month. So I only posted them earlier today. I'm not sure if anybody got to look at them, but hopefully it's nothing too controversial. So any objections to approving the minutes? Okay, so hearing none, we'll call the minutes approved from last month's meeting. Anything on anybody's agenda other than what I had already provided for our tentative agenda?
I don't think you had Mike Reed's letter on your agenda, did you? Because he just wrote it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had sent it before on the 15th, but I neglected to share it with everybody.
Right. But was that anything that needed to be on an agenda, or was that just sharing?
Yeah, I think it should, because I think it's a very important letter, and I think it should be more widely disseminated to the powers that be. So I think it should be on the agenda.
Okay, thanks, Judy.
Unless the author objects.
No objection.
Okay, so that's about the our letters to request a shift of priority in the value in kind of the values that the national highway, what is it, the federal was it Federal Transportation and Highway, I forget the agency, but it's
MUTCD is the document, the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and it's assembled by a committee of a private committee.
Okay, but it's about the values that the federal and the state DOT follow by following that manual.
It's the blueprint.
Exactly. Okay. All right, so we'll add that to the agenda. And then anything else that anybody wanted to bring to the table?
I presume everybody saw the lead article by Erin Quinn in 2 weeks ago, I guess, in New Paltz, in the what do they call it, the Hudson Valley One.
Yes.
It was a very extensive article. It, included a lot of stuff on us, and I was glad it was there, because the Evelyn Wright had said that we should be generating publicity, and that's an example of it.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, and thanks for your part in that, Judy.
Yeah, she got in touch with me. I had nothing to do with her deciding to write it.
Right.
But I was glad she did. She's a cyclist, a hiker, and a swimmer. So it's good to have somebody like that who knows how to write well.
Yes. So that's already on the agenda, I believe.
Okay.
So we'll make sure to cover that. And thanks for joining us, Steve and Hans and Neil, and
Steve,
already said hi to Janelle. And
is Steve's picture there?
No.
I'm here. Hello.
Oh yeah, there we go. And
Hi,
Hans
Steve.
and Neil. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just eating dinner. I didn't want to gross you out with the food.
No worries. Welcome, Hans. Okay, so one of the first items that I had on the agenda was an update on the logo, because last meeting, I believe Michael mentioned that you had been in conversation with Michelle Zip, and there was some progress on a logo. So I wrote Michelle. She had written me as soon as I sent out the message earlier today, and she had written and said she can't come to our meeting tonight because she's officiating a wedding. But I asked her about the logos, and so she sent some of them, and I put them in the shared folder. So if you just open up the chat and click that tiny URL link, then it opens up the our shared folder, and there's 4 items that all say bicycle plus pedestrian. 2 of them are images and 2 of them are PDFs. But so those were the logo ideas. So if you're able to open them up and you want to take a look now, then we can just kind of get a sense now if we're cool with using that as a current logo. I think she had like a darker version and a lighter version, but otherwise, and if it's easier for me to share screen, I can share the screen and save all of you the work of having to dig it out yourself. Okay. So we'd have to convert it a little bit into more of like a thin strip that can go at the top of a page as a letterhead. But as far as I'm concerned, for now, that should be good enough. I would just want to check with the village and the town about whether we should kind of put that on one side of the letterhead, and then on the other side have the village and the town logos, or just one or the other. So that it kind of gives two official logos together, but it's nice to have something that we can put visually on the top of a page. So yeah, any feedback at all on how that's looking?
Are you going to share screen, or do we each need to find it?
Oh, do you want me to share screen? Is that easier?
That would be easier. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, let me just share screen. I'll do it temporarily, and then I'll try to shut it down, remember to shut it down so that we can all see each other's smiling faces. So here it is for now. That's one of the logo options. And so that was this image, and then there's this image. I think the main difference is color. One of them is shaded a little bit more. Yeah, it's just a little bit of a different, darker image for the bicycle, but they're very similar.
Is this something Michelle created?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
With some feedback from Michael and from some others of us in earlier iterations, I believe.
I can help iterate on this. That's something, obviously, I can communicate with Michelle, but yeah.
Okay. Do you have ideas for tweaks to make?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking for you were talking about a letterhead, right? So the top of the page. I think the lettering itself, the New Paltz Bicycle Pedestrian Committee, could be probably one line. Like across the page, maybe we could actually highlight some of the words like New Paltz, or just to separate the town from the committee, and then placing the logos. I mean, I could come up with some ideas pretty quickly.
Okay, great. Yeah, that was the first thing that I thought of, is just as a letterhead, you kind of want not very tall, but you want it to be nice and wide. It doesn't have to be, but then if it's not, then the size of the font is just going to get smaller and smaller. So yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I would increase the leading on the bicycle so that it has equal weight with the physicals, the other three items. So
Like that, more like the second one here.
And I mean, this is like the logo, and I think that for letterheads and other usages, you should specify underneath where it would have like the certainly a web address and phone number, or email address, or some contact information. Because if you're going to put it on a letter, it would be really useful to where do I return the letter to? If you're going to do it on just as some kind of an endorsement, like on a poster, this bike ride sponsored by, I think it's really appropriate that it sort of worked that way.
Yeah, this is right in my wheelhouse. I'm happy to iterate on a couple of things and send them out, and then either discuss it in the next meeting, or we can have feedback in the email thread.
Great.
And I should also mention that the county had adopted, at least the Trails Committee had adopted the concept of a more circular design for any kind of logos for the trail systems and stuff. And this has a nice circularity that, if it's scrunched a little bit, it would fit nicely into a circular logo.
Cool.
So oh, go ahead.
I was just curious for the question about adding the town or the village information in. Is that something you would follow up on, Daniel? Or like if it was a letterhead where this was on one side and like the town or the village was on the other side?
I can follow up. I mean, Neil's right here. I don't know if you want to weigh in on that, Neil, but otherwise, if it's something I should kind of check with.
I'm pretty sure other committees do it. I think it's fine, but I'll check to make sure.
They include the town official logo or the village official logo. Is that what you're saying they do?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just check to make sure. I don't
Okay.
think it'll be a problem.
Okay. And I'm not quite sure what to do in terms of contact information. I mean, we could put the webpage of our town of New Paltz Bicycle Pedestrian Committee webpage, web address, the URL. So that could be one contact information to add. Hey, Mark, welcome. But yeah, maybe that if you can inquire to Neil about what other identifying information other committees include, if they include a URL link or because I don't have an official bike-ped email address. I mean, I just have my own personal email address, and I don't know that we'd want to put that on
No,
on a
bunch of people they'll get newpaltzbikeped@gmail.com.
Oh, okay.
You can see what's available. Most of the time, people just get Gmail stuff, and then they just switch it around from person to person.
Yeah, that could be a
it's
good
cheap,
idea.
free.
Okay, I'm going to stop the share here so I can continue to take notes on my working agenda. So I'll make a note to consider creating a Gmail address for the committee. Okay, so we'll keep working on that. And then Janelle also added an item for the agenda. Any final things on the logo, letterhead logo, or should we take that offline and do some work and report back for our next meeting?
Sure. Thank Michelle.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, thanks much to Michelle. Before I forget, I see that Janelle, you wrote me directly. You want to raise that issue, Janelle, to the whole group? Okay, why don't we do that? Janelle wrote me directly saying she wanted to add something to the agenda. So we'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you. I'll try to keep this tight. I just wanted to ask if I might be considered as what would you call it, a liaison to this group from Climate Smart, because I need to pull back, but I don't want to just not have any involvement with the committee. But I have personal issues going on back in Wisconsin that's really going to take a lot of time, probably for at least a year. So I'm going to be distracted a lot and having to go back there. So I don't want to compromise the quality of the work, for this committee. And I'm wondering, I see a few more people lately. I'm wondering if I don't want to prevent somebody who was in the wings who might like to be on the committee as a full member. Where are we at in terms of how many people are on the committee currently? And if I step down as a formal member, would that open that up then to somebody else having involvement?
You are not taking anybody's spot. So I would not worry on that front. You can focus on kind of taking care of yourself and doing what you need to do for yourself. But that does not have to entail removing yourself as an official member unless that kind of feels good to you. Ariana was writing with me yesterday, I believe, to find out who we had as members, and we're very short on members for the village. I always have a hard time remembering the numbers, but if I recall correctly, and so I asked Ariana for clarification, and she said, let me see here, that officially we're supposed to have 4 village members, 4 town members, a chair, and then the liaisons from the village and the town. So we have the liaisons right now. Neil is valiantly serving as the town liaison, which we're very, very privileged and grateful for. And then Michelle is the village liaison. But we have, I believe, only Judy on the village side. Does anybody else live in the village?
Steve lives in the village if he wanted to be on the committee. Is
Yeah,
that
we would.
right, Steve?
And we'd love to have you, Steve, if you're interested. And we also love having you, just come when you can, if that's more your style.
Is he muted or something? Steve, hello?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Don't
Yes.
you live in the village?
I do live in the village. I do. I'm not able to make it to every meeting. So I'm not sure about committing myself to something where I would feel that I would need to attend every meeting.
So for clarification, nobody has to attend every meeting. I kind of follow in the line of the last two chairs who I served under, especially Peter Kaufman, who was always very clear that we are not getting paid. We are volunteers. We come when we can. We do what we can, and there's no shame whatsoever in having to miss 1 or 2 or 3 or however many you have to miss per year. It's really kind of about what feels right to you, and we can take it offline and discuss it. You and I, or you and Judy, or whoever. So we're not ganging up on you. Right now.
That sounds fine. Yeah, that sounds fine.
But we are short on members for the village. We have, I believe, just Judy. We officially have Rich Pseudo listed, but he has been unable to. It's clearly not something that he's been able to regularly attend. He hasn't. I think he probably doesn't remember that he still is, a village member. And I'm friends with Rich. I'm not. There's no judgment. It's just, again, everybody does what they can. And he made a try, but he was originally still commuting to the city 5 days a week, and then the pandemic hit, and I'm sure there's other things going on. So we are, have room for many people who live in the village. On the town, we've got Mark officially on board. I can pop up our website to see what's officially listed as our membership. townofnewpaltz.org, and then do I have I don't even have it bookmarked here. If you just go to townofnewpaltz.org, and then you go to boards and committees, and then click over to bike ped. So right now it's got me as acting chair, Judy as village member, and then for town it's got vacant, and then Mark and Janelle. And it's not updated to have Neil as the town liaison. It just has Michelle Zip. So officially we have 4 members. One from the village, me as chair, and 2 from the town. So
And Michael, I think Michael has been coming to every meeting, and I don't.
And Michael does not want to be listed, and
officially he doesn't want to be listed.
Yeah,
right.
and I totally respect that. So
Right.
we are glad to have you. Anybody in whatever fashion they wish to join and participate. So yeah, in reality, Michael has every bit of influence as the rest of us, but officially he wishes not to be officially listed. And we kind of, the way we roll, that is, and the way we're allowed to roll, that's all totally fine. So you can see, Janelle, that you're not keeping a spot from anybody.
I was just going to say, if the whole zooming in is a big convenience to me, that will definitely increase my ability to participate, because I'm in the city right now, and I had to scoot just a tiny bit early, and I'm still just a little bit late getting in, but
yeah,
it's huge. And if we can continue to be able to access the meetings via Zoom, I think we can open it up. More people can feel like, oh, even if I'm out of town, I can click in at 7 p.m. and hear the information, give a little bit of feedback, and perhaps be tasked out in something. And so you don't have to be at every meeting. as I am living proof of.
Yes. Yeah, that's good to hear that feedback. We'll circle back to that in a minute, kind of about whether we want to keep this Zoom format even beyond the pandemic's dark days. Let's first just kind of stick with what Janelle brought up, and then if I forget, somebody remind me to come back. I did add it as an agenda item, I believe, of kind of our future format. And then I'm not trying to ignore Hans, and also from, why am I blanking? She's not here tonight, but we have had, let me look up our minutes from last month. But we've also had Shauna has been attending. So, for Hans and for Shauna and for anybody else, including Steve, you can kind of fly beneath the radar screen and be like Michael and, come to the meetings, attend, participate. You're live streaming on YouTube, so you're not private, but, you're basically an attendee officially to a meeting. But we don't do a lot of votes where we exclude anybody from our meetings. So in effect, you're basically one of us. And if you're interested, you can choose to take the next step, which is appreciated by the government, but by the village and the town, but it's your choice whether you want to do it, which is to officially become a member. And officially becoming a member means that you need to fill out a little bit of paperwork, and you have to go to the town office, I believe it is, and then you have to get reappointed every couple of years, which was partly why Ariana was writing me to kind of keep a tab on our village members. So at any point, I can circle back, Hans, with you. I can circle back with Shauna, and and Steve too. If for anybody who wishes to officially become a member, that's that's the way it's supposed to be. We're a committee. People are supposed to be able to look up our membership and know who our members are. So officially, if you're a regular, you're supposed to become.
Yeah, not only that, but there's a degree of commitment involved. You join a committee, there's a psychologically, I think there's a degree of commitment than if you're just floating, and. True.
But Michael obviously is very
if there are
committed,
good reasons not to, I know.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
just saying if there are good reasons not to, that's one thing. But if there are not good reasons not to, it's better to join as long as it's opening. So that's
exactly.
I think we don't have to belabor it anymore.
Right.
Really.
Right. So getting back to Janelle, first of all, just speaking as the acting chair, we are so grateful for all that you have done. And I'm sure many of us, and I certainly know a lot of stuff you're doing with other groups through my other hat on campus with the Environmental Task Force. And so, of course, take care. You've got family, personal stuff to take care of, and we totally understand. And, you just do what you can do. If you need to separate at some point from our committee for the long haul, or if you need to separate for a year or for a month, we totally understand. And
I think
you don't.
What Judy just said, and that's the fact that when I'm on a committee, I feel an obligation to be active beyond the meeting. There's a lot of things to do on the outside and not just attend a meeting and say you're on the committee. And it's that outside part that I'm just not going to be able to do a lot with right now. But yet as long as I'm not taking up space that somebody else could be in and be more active, I will remain on, because it's very important to me to stay linked in and be apprised of all the information. And then when things free up more, I can be more active again.
Sure. Just, as being, the husband of a therapist, I just, want to say that, if, as you just said, that having your name listed as a member makes you feel pressure to do more than is good for you, I totally honor if it's, if you need to remove yourself as a member and come as you can. I just want to say you don't need to remove yourself as a member in order to, open up a space for somebody else, because we have the opposite problem.
Okay, I think this is understood. At 7:30, I think we need to get into.
Thank you, Judy.
At this point.
Okay, let's move on then. So next up, I I did say to remind me to circle back to just the question of how we want to meet. I would ordinarily say let's punt that, but I do think it's kind of an elephant in the room that we should just quickly try to address. Mark made a really good case for sticking with Zoom for longer. I know Neil made a case last meeting for potentially just meeting at Hasbrook Park outdoors when the weather is good. I guess the quickest way to handle this is that we stick with the default unless a super majority of us wish to do otherwise. Are there any major voices who want to do otherwise and try to, weather permitting, meet in person outdoors? Or are we all pretty, are many of us like Mark preferring to?
Well, I'm not sure I would say I prefer it, but for myself to be able to do it, regardless of whether there's a live in-person meeting, it's super helpful because I travel a lot, and the spigot somehow turned back on, and I'm busy,
Yeah.
which is great, but that's sometimes an impediment to making it physically to the meeting.
Sure.
So,
And that would be my situation too. I
Yeah.
would more regularly attend the meetings if they were virtual.
I think that, I have 3 different Zoom meetings that happen every month. And the other 2, I'd be happy to go back in person. But this one, I think, is much, much better to continue on Zoom. I think we can be more successful that way. And, it's just, and if we want to see each other in person, why don't we have a party?
Bike ride. Go for a bike ride.
Yeah, or a bike ride, right? End of the year party. But I know that for me to get over to the Hasbrook Park means that I have to get out and take a car because I can't, I'm not comfortable riding back home at night on a bike and so on. So it's just a lot more convenient.
So as far as I'm concerned, enough said. Like I said, unless we have sort of had a strong consensus in the other direction, I would, this is our default. And so let's not waste any more time on that. That's useful information. Candidly, it's easier for me because, I'm home with not having to leave the family for longer. I would much rather see you all in person. I think that's kind of what Mark was saying too, but the benefits seem to outweigh the costs. So let's move on and we'll kind of plan this as our default until we have a consensus in the other direction, or until we get directives from the village and or town that we should resume meeting in person. So let's switch over to the what is it called? The model, the Manual of Uniform Traffic, and I forget what the D stands for. What's the D stand for again?
Devices.
Devices, I did have it right. Okay, so thanks to Neil, I forwarded to you guys a link to submit, and then I found 2 other advocacy organizations that kind of do these action alerts that make it easier to click a pre-written letter. So many of us participated, many of us shared our letters, which were truly amazing. I'm sorry I didn't get to respond to some of you, Steve, Judy, Michael, who shared some really amazing letters, but I did read them all and really was very impressed and appreciative that you shared them. So Judy wanted to bring this up as an agenda item, so I'll turn the floor over to perhaps you and Michael on this item, if that's okay.
Sure. I mean, I just thought that Michael's letter was very, just excellent. It was very strong. I mean, we all made contributions, but I just read it tonight. And I just think that somehow that should be circulated in a way that would put pressure on somebody at the DOT to actually read it and, read it and respond to it. So I don't just want to see it, one more thing that we write and goes into the, into the air. But, I don't know, Michael, do you have ideas on how to follow up?
Well, actually, I did write it partially to use the text in other formats. I've been talking regularly to Phil Steck's office. When he's the assemblyman from Rensselaer. He had been on the transportation committee. He was the one that had proposed the 3 with passing, and he's been very supportive and happy to help in other ways. And so when I was just writing it, I was thinking of some of the conversations we had And so I'm thinking of like reformatting or just providing that information to everybody else to just cut and paste from their own into their own thinking and writing. I think it was great that there was a diversity of letters, and I really appreciate Steve's letter, which was deeply personal. It really says this is the story on the ground. This is what's really, and
Yeah.
I tried to give more of a historical and also the non-representative nature of how that MUTCD has been arrived at and has been continually sustained. And both AASHTO and NACTO have come out against this revision. And this week I spent 2 days in Cambridge. And I don't know if you know Cambridge, Harvard Square and all that stuff. It's a spaghetti of streets and narrow and one way. And there's this amazing bike infrastructure there. And everything that is in the current AASHTO or NACTO things about bike ped design was basically done on the ground by Massachusetts DOT, several years ago. And that's been, they really adopted, AASHTO adopted the Massachusetts DOT's standards. And it's amazing.
Could you say what the initials that you're talking? I have forgotten the initials.
Oh, yeah. AASHTO is the American Association of State Transportation Officials. So it's all the 50 states DOTs, basically.
Okay.
And they have design guidelines for, roads.
So that's the national organization of it?
It's a national organization, and all the officials that are appointed by, either the governor or legislators, et cetera. So these are all representatives of the public in one way or another.
Okay.
NACTO is the National Association of City Transportation Officials. So that's more urban design. And, that was I think it was, I forgot the name, the consultant that the village and the town used recently for Du Bois is
Alta Planning.
Alta Planning was sort of credited with having written NACTO, but NACTO is taking their design ideas from the state of Massachusetts. And what I just wanted to say is that having been there for the last, for 2 days this week, it's this marvelous network of bike infrastructure. And they've done a lot of things that are kind of ad hoc, it seems, where they just like laid out Jersey barriers to create a protected bike lane. And the restaurants that now have, sidewalk dining went out there and put flower boxes on them. So it's like this really attractive and fully protected. You got 3 inches of concrete between you and cars. And the amazing thing is, what I had a chance to see is that the drivers are all really educated by this now. There are nice little yield signs that says yield to bike and pedestrians in crosswalks and in the bike lane. So for cars making a right turn, they automatically stop if you're coming along and let you have the right of way continuing straight. So
just to let everyone know, a lot of those changes were done because of COVID, and they were allowed. Yeah, they were allowed to do a lot of these things without the studies that would normally be required. And I think they've learned a lot about it. There's a bunch of articles written about this, but they did that specifically in Boston. They took advantage of it. I think we kind of missed an opportunity to do that here in New York. Didn't happen nearly enough.
Hey, Neil, do you think you could share some of you mentioned some articles. Do you think you could share some of that data with us, like links to articles you're talking about there?
I mean, I've read them over the last year. I can try to find a few of them and dig them up. I just know my niece lives in Boston. She was telling me about this. She's been riding a lot. She got a bike out of storage and is not going back. She's going to stay on a bike now. So that's just proves what happens when people get on the bikes. They stay on them.
Well, this is Harvard students, right, are taking advantage of this. And Harvard students are very valuable. Lots of them have lots of money, so we should preserve their lives. So that must be a factor.
Anyway, it's a wonderful network, and they've done things like painted crosswalks. I mean, these are well worn. They've been there before COVID. I mean, but to see green bike lanes And wherever there's not a bike lane, there's a sharrow. And to see these very narrow streets with very, all these intersections are rather obtuse. They're not like nice right angles. So very complicated design is required. And to be on riding contrary to traffic on a one-way street because there's a bike lane, a separated bike lane, enabling bikes to go the opposite direction. So it's just, it's a lot of great work. And like I said, this revision of the MUTCD actually threatens all those things because they're quote unquote, non-standard solutions. And anyway, I encourage you to spend a couple of days up in Cambridge if you can.
So in line with what I heard Judy saying, one possible way to kind of take the information that you shared, Michael, excuse me, in your letter to submit these comments to it was the Federal Highway Administration, I guess, or that we were submitting to. But one possible way to make use of them would be to approach Erin Quinn again and see if she would like to write a story about how New Paltz is kind of being handcuffed by the priorities of New York State, of our section of New York State,
our DOT.
And how there's a movement now in nationally to try to take advantage of the change of administration and the more receptiveness of Secretary Buttigieg and others that would enable New Paltz to have new possibilities. So it could kind of be like a inspiring second article, follow-up article to the delays and disappointments on the shoulder project for 299, and kind of inspire residents to see that there's a movement, to try to reimagine the priorities. And then I don't know if the Poughkeepsie DOT folks get briefed on, if there's some PR ones who kind of get briefed on what's being written in local papers, but maybe it gets their, maybe it catches their attention if local papers are writing about this stuff. So that my understanding has been that the reporters and journalists at New Paltz Times, Hudson Valley One are pretty receptive to people approaching them saying, here, I got a possible story for you.
Oh, absolutely.
So I don't know Erin Quinn myself. I mean, I've kind of been quoted based on some email, kind of interview stuff, but others of you, Judy and others, know her better. So does that seem like a good one possible approach, is to try to approach her about this spin?
Sure, I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, I mean, this is her territory. She staked this out. She is very athletic herself, and safer streets is her territory.
I mean, take a look at the fact that we've had this dangerous situation on 299 going up to 4455 for years. We have 32 and 208 are deteriorating right there on the edge of right in the town and village, is in terrible shape. And what did DOT decide to do? They decided to resurface 299 between Puck Corners Road going out to 9W. And there's an 8-foot wide full breakdown lane, bikeable lane there. Whereas on 32, you have nothing. You got 18 inches maybe of broken pavement. So, I mean, what's their priority? That was a plan they've had for years. I mean, I don't know when was the last time 32 was repaved?
When was the last time that DOT consulted our committee as to what our priorities are? Never.
Never. Well, I mean, it's got to be 20 years that 32 is more.
Yeah. Okay. I think what Dan was saying is a very good idea. I mean,
yep.
Yeah. I mean, we should really be going to high gear on this, because this seems like an opportunity to tell our DOT that they are not in step with the times. And if you've been inspired by Cambridge, listen, I was inspired every time I went to Switzerland, but Cambridge is closer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are lots of other inspiring examples. I mean, I haven't been there in a long time. Maybe Janelle's been there more recently, but in the 8 years I was in Madison, Wisconsin from 94 to 2002, bike infrastructure just went from pathetic to unbelievable, and that I haven't been back in ages. I imagine in the last 20 years they've just gotten more amazing, and I'm sure we can point to city after city, and college town after college town.
Even here in New York City, the bike infrastructure has dramatically improved from when I was riding the streets here, when we moved away 20 years ago.
So we don't have to go to Switzerland.
Yeah, and they're protected bike lanes or marked bike lanes or sharrows, and all tuned into Google Maps, and you can basically chart a bike route to get around Lower Manhattan, into Brooklyn, into Queens. It's impressive.
Yeah. So we can think about other ways. I like Judy's thinking that we have a insightful written document by Michael, laying out kind of a new way of thinking and why we should think in this new way, and why we should pressure our federal DOT and state DOT. So getting Aaron Quinn to write an article is just one of the ways we can step in that direction. But maybe we can work on that one now, and then maybe next month we can think about how that can build on other ideas of where to take some of that writing. If it's okay, let's move on to some of the other items. The next one that I have is updates about the Henry W. Du Bois project. Neil and I were in on a meeting, where we're on I forget what the word is, but we're kind of on an advisory group of folks who hired Alta Planning and who Alta Planning reports to for feedback and to check in. So Neil, do you want to share, or do you want me to, some of what transpired in the last meeting?
Either way. I have we have a press, or what's this called? Not really a press release, but we have a public information meeting that I just want to make sure everyone is aware of. So on June 8th, from 6 to 7:30, there's going to be a Zoom public informational meeting to solicit feedback on various design elements for the Henry W. Du Bois Drive Pedestrian and Bicycle Improvement Project. And I would encourage everyone on the Bike Ped Committee to attend, tell their friends who ride bikes or are pedestrians and value bike ped infrastructure. We know there are going to be some people there that don't like the design, and so we'd like to get some people there who value and recognize the importance of good bike ped infrastructure. And then on top of, so just to give everyone some background, the DOT finally approved the design, and so there's going to be a shared use path for the project. That was never a sure thing, but we were really hoping that was going to happen. For people who maybe weren't around in the beginning of this project, and we're complaining about this, the MUTCD, and I learned a lot more about this, which is why I sent this thing to Dan. Their DOT, because of the MUTCD, is very traditional in their approach, and so the default is basically a big wide road with some paint on the sides for people to ride their bikes up and down, and a sidewalk on one side. We hired Alta because they're specialists in bike ped design, and the committee wanted a shared use path on one side, and so we had to, through this whole process that DOT has, you have to lay out the different alternatives and then say what your preferred alternative is. And so one alternative is to do nothing. The other alternative was to basically build very traditional bike lanes and have a sidewalk on one side. And then what they call the preferred alternative was a shared use path on one side, similar to what's along 299 to the town of Lloyd, 8 to 10 foot wide paved path protected with barriers from the roadway to as much extent as possible. And you had to jump through a lot of hoops. It was was pretty amazing the effort that the engineers from Alta put in. They hit roadblock after roadblock, and they eventually got it, and it was approved. So we're going to get it, and I think it's huge. I think it's gonna, and the rationale for that was to have infrastructure. I forget the exact term, but there's a term like interested, but scared or something like that. So that's how you attract new people to riding bikes. And those are the people we really want to get out there riding and walking, because those are the ones that would normally use their car. The people like Michael, they're going to ride, they'll ride their bike down, the thruway. They're fearless. It's people like, my wife and a lot of friends who maybe haven't ridden a bike in 10 or 15 years. They want to do it, but they're nervous. But this is kind of like a gateway drug to get them out there and riding their bikes. And you make it safe. People are more likely to just say, oh, well, I'll just ride my bike instead of hopping in the car. And so that's the rationale for why we really wanted this. And we have it now. And so at this meeting, they're going to present those details and the design. And then the next thing that needs to be discussed and presented to the public is this idea of traffic calming. And those are methods that are used to slow cars down. It's less important now on this project because we have the shared use path with a protected shared use path. But I like the idea of introducing people in New Paltz to this idea of traffic calming. And it's like one example is raised crosswalk. So, people can't drive down at 55 miles an hour. They have to really slow their car down. Another one is they call it pinch points, where they kind of narrow the road. And so it's still safe, but it's a little more nerve-wracking for people. And like, I better go a little bit slower, so I don't feel like I'm on this huge highway and I can drive 55 miles an hour. And they have a whole bunch of different ideas for stuff like that. And they're going to be presenting those ideas to the public. And then the last is, and then they're going to put up a couple different ideas for what type of separation barrier to separate the cars from the bicyclists on the shared use path. In some places, it's probably going to just be a raised curb because we don't have enough room. In other places, it will be some sort of guardrail, maybe wood, maybe not, because the DOT may not approve that. They don't have the same strength to keep cars from crossing it, or like a steel barrier. And then some places just put in like fiberglass poles to make it seem separate, but a car could still kind of ride through it. I don't like those at all. I like a real safety barrier, but they'll talk about those things. And then landscaping. They bunch of pallets of different trees. Any tree that gets cut down, or bush that gets cut down, will be replaced in kind. 1 for 1, maybe even more for 1 if we have enough money. So that's just kind of where we are. But I think it's going to be a good meeting. All this has happened since the last time we met, so we're making progress. And right now the timeline is put the bids out in the fall, start some of the work early fall, maybe cutting the trees down. But then in the spring, things really ramp up, and then work progresses through the summer, with the goal of trying to be done with the whole project by the beginning of the school year or sometime in the fall, of 2022. So we can still maybe ride before it snows. That's all I got. I probably missed some stuff, Dan. You can weigh in.
No, I mean, I think that was more, that was great. That was a very, you hit all the key points, and better than I would have. I mean, the landscaping obviously is going to be something where a lot of the neighbors who currently have signs up and who are, trying to do everything they can to fight this project, I'm sure they're going to turn out. So as Neil brought up, having some folks with some pro-bicycling, pro-pedestrian sensibilities, and with more accurate knowledge of what the project is rather than flame throwing paranoia would really help.
Yeah, I mean, one of the comments that several people who are against this project have made, they've said that, this road's not safe for bicyclists and pedestrians at all. So we shouldn't be doing this project because we don't want to encourage more people to use it. They've also said that we're only building this project for out-of-state or out-of-town cyclists who are going to come through and use the Empire Trail, and we shouldn't be wasting our money for the benefit of other people. I disagree with both of those. I think you would too. We all ride or walk, and it benefits us. So that's just my feeling on that.
And then, one of the, some of the residents on the street had, done the original error in amateur muckraking, where they kind of went and read the primary document on their own and claimed to find some smoking gun. But what it was, and you can correct me, Neil, if I could have any of this wrong, but they thought that they found some major scandal, in reading Alta's documents that we were somehow planning on increasing the speed limit on Henry W. Du Bois, which was never part of the plan. It was kind of amateurs misunderstanding professional speak. And there was never any plan to increase the speed limit on Henry W. Du Bois. As you can see, one of the core items in the informational meeting is talking about ways to slow the speed in practice, not raise a speed limit. So there's just been a lot of misinformation. And again, I'm friendly with one family that lives there that is part of this, effort of by any means necessary block Supervisor Betez's bicycle superhighway evil communist project or whatever they call it, and it's kind of abhorrent to to me to read some of this diatribes in letters to the editor. So the more of us who can attend, who can.
What's the date again?
June 8th.
June 8th at what time?
What was it, 6 to 7:30? Is that right, Neil? Yeah, it's tentatively, I think, at 6 to 7:30.
Yes, that's
8th.
Correct. And
it's a Tuesday.
Well, can we get a link so that we could advertise it to our?
Once we get it, we don't have official promotion, information yet. But once we do, I'll be sure to send it to our list.
It should be in the paper too.
With our logo.
Yes, with our logo. Okay, we can move on if that's okay, to other items. Is there any other item that any of you kind of feel is really pressing that you wanted me to get to? Otherwise, I'm kind of going down the list in the order that I have. But is there anything that any of you were seeing as a major priority that you'd want us to cover? Don't think too hard. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't pushing anything aside. So the next one that I had, number 6, is at least on my document. I think it's synced with whatever you guys are looking at too. Was just to see if there's any updates about the shoulder project on 299 from Butterville to Route 4455. When I was looking back at my notes from last month's meeting, I saw that I had assigned myself to contact Lou Klepner about this. Specifically, it's what I'm referring to is Aaron Quinn's article that Judy mentioned. And Judy brought this up last month's meeting, that the article had kind of a concerning new development, which was our county executive, Pat Ryan, stating that the project was underfunded and that there were efforts to contact our federal House member, Antonio Delgado, to try to seek sufficient funds so that this project wasn't underfunded. So we were going to wait to read the article because last month's meeting, the article by Aaron Quinn had not yet come out. So I read the article. I'm sure others of you did too. And it didn't give me, any specific clarity about the extent of or the verification of lack of funding for this project. So that's why I said I would, contact Lou, since his wife works in the office of the county executive, I believe. So I wrote him earlier today to see if he is able to get any intelligence on the inside about how much, if there really is a shortfall, and when this became known, and how minor or significant the shortfall is, and how optimistic or pessimistic folks in the county executive's office are about making up the shortfall. Because again, it was all news, at least to me, as of last month. So I haven't heard back because I only wrote Lou today. But if any others have any contacts within the county executive office or elsewhere, it would be good to get to the bottom of this and find out if there really is a funding shortage. I don't have any more information than that. It was just kind of something that we wanted to follow up on from last meeting. Anything further anybody has in terms of information or concerns about the snail's pace of the 299 shoulder completion?
Well, I thought that it was a little bit misleading to have a headline saying that it was being blocked by recalcitrant landowners, because I don't think that's a major issue, but maybe I'm wrong. I mean, that's not what they're saying though. If they're saying, I mean, is it money? Is it landowners? Is it both? Is it that, that the original scope of the project was completely, the cost of it was just minimized unrealistically because the county executive, wanted to respond to what happened to Gabby? I mean, these are linked together.
Right.
So, I think getting Delgado involved is very appropriate. And Steve made a very good beginning on that. I think whatever we do, we should send copies to him to keep him involved.
Right. And I hear what you're saying, Judy. I mean, what I recall hearing was more just that there are so many landowners that it's inherently a slow process based on the procedures that New York State DOT abides by. I hadn't heard that any landowners were being particularly jerky about blocking this project, but I'm not privy to that information. So if it is the case, I haven't heard it. So I hear what you're saying about the byline of the story maybe being misleading.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it's good that it was it was the front page story, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, and
it
was a very extensive story. And I don't know that picking out that thing was particularly helpful, but the story itself was helpful.
Right.
I mean, if they're having problems with any particular landowner, this is something that we could help with.
Yes.
I mean, if we knew who the person was.
In general, it's the right-of-way acquisition takes years. It adds years to the project. It's so complicated. We worked really hard on Henry W. to not have any right-of-way needed, because it would have added 2-3 more years to the project, and we probably would have gone beyond the deadline for funding. And so, once you start these projects, you have to get them finished within a certain amount of time. So they just don't. It adds so much, and that project has a lot of right-of-way, and it's expensive.
But there was also a lot of right-of-way on 299 and the Highland Rail Trail and all of that, and it was done. It took extra time, it's true, but there was a lot of right-of-way for the high school project. That was a huge number, where it really intruded on people's lawns and so forth, and much more than 299 would, because most of those people don't have lawns.
Right. So we'll keep following this. If anybody hears any more information about how significant the shortfall is, if there really is a shortfall, at the county level. You know, it's a bit of a mystery that was all news that the news just dropped on us last month, thanks to Aaron's reporting. But we need to know a lot more before we have full information. If it's okay, we'll move on to the next item. Item 7 is about the request for no writes on red at the minimum, and ideally all stops, so that it's like by the mobile station, Lola's kind of main intersection in town, where when somebody presses the pedestrian button, all traffic stops and you can cross at any of the 4 ways or diagonally. So I wrote a letter on behalf of our committee and sent it to Ariana to forward to the village board and mayor, and I sent it to Kathy Preston to forward it to Neil and to the town board. So I submitted advocacy on behalf of our committee to request, as we talked about in previous meetings, mostly in most of the intersections, no right on red, and then I forget in an intersection or two to request an all stop. And it's really a request for our elected officials to ask New York State DOT, because that's all they can do. It's not the power of our elected officials to make the decision. It's just asking them to advocate to DOT, as always. So that's another issue that we could put on the queue for Erin Quinn, if we want to just keep feeding her ideas for stories, or that could kind of be some specific examples for a bigger story about changing the values that DOT follows. And this could be a kind of a specific example of a change in values of making intersections safer. So that's all I have to say about that topic. Unless anybody else has something about it, we can move on to the next item. All right, so we'll move on to the next item. So another story in the New Paltz Times was about Mike Moriello's proposal to build a big apartment development south of the campus athletic fields to house a ton of students. And that article didn't really, I don't think that article itself didn't bring up anything about a bicycle pedestrian path. But last month, Neil brought up that the village and the town are kind of leveraging Mike Moriello and making the creation of a bicycle pedestrian path one of the factors in approval of this apartment complex. So I guess I only bring it up just to say that you might, if you haven't already, you might want to read that article about this proposed apartment complex. It's kind of not the same thing, but it's related to a previous effort most of a decade ago, which got defeated, the Park Point project, and that one got defeated for tax break reasons of the payment in lieu of taxes. So this one's kind of its own new version, but it does have implications for bicycles and pedestrians. The positive side would be adding a lot more student housing can reduce the number of commuters who are clogging our roads, and having more students living right next to campus can also reduce the number of students who live in town but drive to school. So having a bicycle pedestrian path connecting this apartment complex to campus, is that's the positive side from a bike ped committee. Obviously there's some environmental and other potential negative sides. And again, with the previous iteration, there were some tax concerns for the school district and the police and otherwise. That's all I had to say about that. Does anybody else have anything to chime in on this Mike Moriello project?
Could I just ask you, Dan, what is the policy at the college for bikes on sidewalks?
I don't know. Bikes on
There's
campus
no-
sidewalks?
Technically speaking, there's like no marked infrastructure for bikes or even for ADA compliant, there's no map. If you were to
Right.
enter the campus on the east side, like where the Ridge is, which you can go through the Ridge parking lot to, Cherry Hill, which is quite nice. But you arrive at the campus, it's not clear. You have to ride across that grass to get into the parking lot. And then, where do you go? How do you get to the west side of campus?
They have a shared use path basically circling the entire campus.
And what about, can you ride anywhere on the sidewalks?
Yeah, I've never heard any policy about whether you can ride on the narrow sidewalks. I know like on that there's the main, there's like a new wide sidewalk that
Oh,
used
yeah,
to
I
be
know
a
that
bunch
one.
of, it used to be a bunch of parking lots. I think it's called Mohonk Walk or something, but it's the one that goes right down to my faculty tower, and the quad is on the right. With that one, there's some signs kind of up high on the light posts, I believe, that say like, if you're on wheels, slow down, because I think a lot of skateboarders and some bicyclists have like been tearing down that hill and terrorizing pedestrians who are just trying to walk to campus or walk back to their residence halls. And so there's some signage just telling people to, if you are on wheels, to be respectful and to go at a reasonable speed. But I know I've had that conversation with you before, Michael, that there's not a lot of signage telling people where they can go in a wheelchair or in a bicycle, because there are a lot of, to get from place A to place B, there are a lot of stairs that make it hard to kind of, and you kind of, in some ways it's common on a lot of campuses. The campus kind of becomes a maze, and when you're a new visitor, you just end up asking people constantly, how do I get to this building? How do I get there? And, I've been on a lot of campuses in my life, and it's kind of that way on every single one I've been on. It's kind of the beauty of being pedestrian friendly, is that you can't just pop into Google Maps and have your car deliver you right, where you're trying to go. But there could be a lot better directions for people, especially in wheelchairs, on how to navigate.
One little switchback one that's right near the tower that goes up, the one I'm talking about? It's a ramped entryway. It would be to the
Oh,
north.
by the administration tower, the Haggerty.
Yes, that one, I don't think that's ADA compliant.
It's too steep.
Yeah. And nowadays it's even too narrow, because you couldn't
Too narrow.
get it with one wheelchair going up and one going down. You'd have to have 6 feet width.
Yeah, they have a bunch of narrow ones around there. Yeah, I'll make a note.
Anyway,
I do think they just put a new ramp in to the front of the student union building.
Yeah.
And then, so that, I think from the parking lot in front, isn't there a new, or within the last year, I don't get on campus as much anymore, but I think, didn't they just put in a new wheelchair ramp basically right in front of the administration building and the student union on the front side?
On the front side, like the 32 South side?
Yeah.
I haven't really been there recently to see, so but that sounds.
I think, and then that gets you up to that level, and so you don't need to use that other ramp that Michael was talking about that is to the north of that.
Right. I come in from the Ridge and go right across the grass into the parking lot, then ride up that little narrow ramp up that way to get to the west side.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that route. So I'll write some contacts at the college just about. That's a nice ringtone, but does anybody know whose it is? Is that you, Judy?
Guessing that's Judy because she's unmuted.
So I'll write contacts at the college in about ADA wheelchair kind of routes or paths, and see what we can find out there. If it's okay, we'll move on. I had a brief note, Neil. It was very brief, so I had forgotten all about it. But number 10 on my current list, it might be number 9 on one you're looking at if it's not syncing, is that you had said, Neil, that you could ask if there will be bike racks installed at the new police station.
Yes, there will be.
There will be. Okay. Do you know any more specifics, like what kind of bike racks or how many or anything like that, or you just got a commitment that there will be?
Yeah, I didn't.
Okay.
If I was told, I'd have to go back and look at my emails. But I think right now there's a space designated for them. I don't think they've picked the particular racks out yet.
Okay. Number 11 on my current list is dangerous grates, grates that pose a danger to bicycles. So I think it was Neil who had said last meeting that what we should do if we see ones that are dangerous is take pictures and write a letter and send photos of it to DOT. And to also share it with the town and the village. So if you come across any grates that are dangerous, that was something back when Peter was chair that he, had kind of tossed around the idea of kind of having like a weekly column in the paper that exposed negligent dangers to cyclists and pedestrians. So we should kind of start keeping a tally of any such dangerous grates or other dangers, lack of curb cuts, etc., and start taking action. I know as a kid, like one of the.
Are you talking about the grates on Main Street on 299?
That would be one of the main. Yeah.
So 12 years ago we were talking about this.
Right. So
about dangerous grates. Yeah, it seems like it's an impossible issue.
It seems like some of them have been improved, or maybe they were always good. Some of the ones like across from the bike depot and Karma Road, some of those are safe, very safe.
Yeah.
But there's still some outdated ones. And as I brought up last meeting, like some of them are very recessed. There's been like layers and layers of blacktop, and the grade is here, and the asphalt is like 6 inches or 4 inches higher, and that could be a real danger. Somebody could flip over if they are unable to go around it because some car is pushing them.
So maybe we should make a report on make a list of those. And
right, exactly. That's what Neil had said last meeting. Yeah. Correct me if I have it wrong, Neil. Yeah. But that we should take pictures. We should document it, and we should send it to our elected village and town officials. And also, send it to DOT to really make sure it gets addressed.
And write a letter to the paper.
And that too, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember I was not on track to be a political science, American politics professor as a kid. My brother always was, but I was not. But one of the first things I kind of recall about elected politics was hearing when I was a kid, some of you were already adults at the time, but, Senator D'Amato, Senator D'Amato was known as the pothole senator. And, the main message is just, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You complain about unsafe road conditions, and you get some results. So we also could share them with Delgado, and, Schumer's super powerful right now, and Gillibrand, if we try to bring back the pothole senators and House members, and really try to raise the alarm about some dangerous road infrastructure like that. So I can easily create a document in our shared Google Drive folder, and we just document them. And if you take any pictures of any of them, share them with me. I'll put them in that document. And once we get a document that's got enough, enough of the real egregious ones, then we'll move forward and take some action, like that. if it's okay, we'll keep moving. On number 12, I don't have any updates, but I know we had, devoted some time in previous meetings about worries about a chipping away at a vegetative buffer, near the thruway at the back of the proposed Trans-Hudson development. I haven't heard any action in the last several months about any developments with the Trans-Hudson project. Never mind, the specific designs of a proposed bike ped, Trans-Hudson built bike ped path that goes behind it. So I'm just keeping that on our agenda, but as far as I know, there's no news there. Correct me if I'm wrong, otherwise we'll move on to the next item. All right, so hearing none, we'll move on to the next item. I just wanted to just move things out of order one here for a second. So on my current document, I just moved it to number 13, missing in-street crosswalk signs. The one update I just wanted to share, some of you who visit Springtown by the River to Ridge crosswalk have seen it yourselves, but the Peter Karras at Open Space Institute had written Ariana and me and a few others. I had contacted Tim Rogers, who then directed me to contact Peter Karras of OSI to report that the in-street crosswalk sign at River to Ridge crosswalk on Springtown was missing. So I contacted Peter Karras at OSI, and eventually he wrote back and said, yes, somebody appears to have stolen it. We're in process of ordering a new one. So the update is now they've ordered two, and there are two of them, and they're both in the shoulder of the River to Ridge crosswalk. And maybe two is twice as good as one, but my response to Peter was, thank you so much. I really appreciate that you ordered not only one, but two, but I do wonder if merely having one of them in the middle of the road, they're called in-street crosswalks for a reason, in-street crosswalk signs for a reason. And I said, I wonder if putting a second one in storage in case the first one gets stolen, and just having one of them in street might be more effective rather than having two of them on the shoulder. I don't know. To me, it just seems like it's much more effective when you have one in the middle of the frickin' road and you're driving and you see one right there in the middle of the road. So he hasn't responded yet. But am I off on this, or do you guys agree with me that having two on the sides is probably inferior to having one right in the middle?
Of course, of course. I mean,
I'll go out there
the whole point.
I go out there in their dark at night, and we can tapcon that baby into the middle of the road every now and then. Go ahead and try and steal it.
Yeah, let's steal the second one, and we'll and then there'll be one, and we'll put it in the yeah. So we'll see what he says. I copied the other.
Maybe they should put in a hidden camera
right.
to see who's doing this.
And they could get one of those tagging systems like Tiles or whatever Apple came up with, and or put a GPS tracking something on one of them, and if it gets stolen, find out where it got stolen to. But overall, I'm grateful that, again, OSI not only bought one but bought two. So hopefully, and it is visible. I mean, I am biking and driving on Springtown on a daily basis, given where we moved to. And I do see both of them. They're right. They're not like way off to the sides. They're right on the fog line. And so they are, they make a presence. I just think it would be more effective to have one in the middle and not have two on the sides. So
yeah, the one in the middle slows traffic. It slows it much better.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's like a different version of a pinch point. It just doesn't pinch the road at the sides. It just pinches it at the middle by putting something right there in the middle. So I'm also not aware now of any other missing in street crosswalk signs. I know I had kind of brought up some that were missing. I'm seeing a lot of them on the side of the roads. I think, and I need to document it for sure. I think I can't remember if the one on Henry W. Du Bois at Mulberry is on the side of the road right now, or if it's in the middle. I can't remember. I think the one by Plattekill at South Oakwood at the college, I think it's on the side of the road. I don't know what's going on, why so many of the in-street signs have been moved to the side, but we'll get Mark to do some vigilante activism in the thick of the night.
Get out the Hilti gun. We'll anchor those babies right down. You try and
Yeah.
steal it now.
Right.
Right?
So we just have a few more minutes, but couple more items that were, oh yeah, one of them, number 15, we already tackled, which was whether to meet on Zoom or to stick with Zoom or meet in person. So it's only one other item that I have, which was us saying that now would be a good time to approach New York State DOT once more about the desire for a crosswalk by the bus station at Prospect, for a variety of reasons that we talked about last meeting. So what I had written down in the notes from last time was we can ask Tim and the village board to approach DOT once more about that request. I've not acted on that yet, so I can act on that this week and get on it. Any final additions or requests or modifications to that? Otherwise,
Could we write a draft and ask them to sign on to it?
I think the way it works is, and Neil, you can correct me. I know this is village, not town, but you probably know the drill of the process. But my understanding is we, as an advocacy committee, basically are writing the elected officials to kind of ask them to make contact with DOT to make the ask. So we're kind of asking them to take the baton and go ahead and ask for the thing that we want, the crosswalk at the bus station. So I think that's kind of the formula of what we're supposed to do. In effect, it's kind of like them signing on to our letter. But
could the town and village pass a resolution saying that it's vital to the safety and economic vitality of Main Street that we have crosswalks? And I don't think just at the bus station, also at where was that guy, Bosakis, where was he killed? What was that street right beside, adjacent to the
Joe Allen.
Joe Allen, yes. That's a long stretch.
A couple of years ago, I did a survey of the crosswalks from basically the bridge to the stop, the Tops Plaza, stores. Basically, right? Yeah. And there's a definite paucity from Mannheim to the Tops stoplight. There's nothing.
Right.
There is no safe way to cross the street there. And I agree. So I think it's really two spots. Really, something should be like maybe Duzine, maybe where yes. It would seem like Duzine would be a good place for one, because people just take their lives in their hands and dash across the street, and it's we're just lucky that we don't have more carnage out there. And then yes, the bus station would be the other one. Those are the two really long sections without a crosswalk, and I can resurrect that info.
Yeah. Well, the reference, what was pointed out in Mike's letter was that given the goal of the DOT to move traffic as fast as possible with fewest impediments, we're right up against that by asking for crosswalks, because cars have to go slow. And I think that should be mentioned in any draft that we propose to town and village.
And I'm fine with, and I support asking for both of these crosswalks. I think hold on one second and I'll turn off this sound.
So I'll fill you guys in a little bit. So, we've been asking, the town and village have been asking for these in particular for years. The last time Tim and I met with DOT, I think it was the woman that's in charge. Is it Sandra?
Sandra Jobson.
Sandra Jobson.
Yeah, so Tim and I met with her. We were told that they put money into what they call a TIP, Transportation Implementation Plan, and there's money budgeted in I think 2024 for pedestrian safety action plans. So my guess is they're going to say we'll address this then. But I think that's why it's important to send these letters now, to keep it on the radar and let them know that you want this. And I think it'll make it more likely that we actually do get these things addressed in a couple of years. But don't be too upset when you don't get a crosswalk this year. This is kind of like a long-term plan. So I think it's good to write, but don't get too jaded when we don't get it this year.
Okay, thanks for that.
By their own criteria, you just have to kill 2 more people on Main Street there, and then they'll put in a crosswalk. Because if they have 3 deaths or 3 fatalities, that triggers.
It's a little dark there, Michael. A little dark.
That's the truth. We'll postpone it to 24 instead. It's like.
So I'm just noticing the clock, and we are at 8:32. I just wanted the one thing I just wanted to say about those requests were that I think the main reason why the request was specifically for at our last meeting, why we talked about the request being especially for the bus station, is that the Sunoco renovation redressed one of the excuses that DOT was using against us, which was the lack of curb cuts and sidewalks. And so, and then, having the Empire State Trail officially, the pedestrian portion of the Empire State Trail specifically coming down there, I think it just, those 2 reasons give us particular leverage to make the case that now is the time for a crosswalk there. But as Michael brings up in a dark fashion, that's entirely appropriate. There's other compelling reasons for crosswalks in further up the hill too, which doesn't mean that will get across to DOT, but we can try. So we covered a lot of turf. We're over time by just a couple minutes. So in respecting our Zoom fatigue and other commitments, why don't we call this meeting done? Keep me in the loop as other things inevitably come up between now and next meeting. Great to see you all, and let's enjoy the rest of our evenings. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, I will terminate.
Take care, everybody.
You
Bye-bye.
too.
Yeah.
Take care.
Yeah.
Take care.
Be
Thanks
safe.
all.
Be safe.
You too.
Let's see. Leave. Okay.